Hi everyone, welcome to Muskies and Whiskey, Episode 1. I'm Garrick. This is going to be a series of cool shows where we talk about musky fishing. I'm going to feature a new whiskey every time. Probably will have a little buzz by the time I get online, and so you'll just forgive me if things are a little bit fuzzy. Today episode is brought to you by Dad's Hat. Distilled right here in the great state of Pennsylvania. And it's pretty good. I'm not going to do any of those whiskey reviews that, it's got a citrusy note with a hint of plum. I'm not going to do that. Is it good enough to drink and get liquored up? I think so. I mixed it with some Coke. All right, on to the show. So it's a couple days before Thanksgiving, and it's been a good musky season for me. A little bit tough at times, but yeah, we got some. And this was my first year with my new boat, and everything went swimmingly well with it. No pun intended. And I just put it away today. Put it in the barn, so no more boat for a couple months. Unless I really get some warm weather here in Pennsylvania and decide to go haul it out. But I, winterized it and stored it away, so it's time to move on to different things. Which is why we're here today. Today is, I don't stop fishing for muskies when the weather gets cold. If you do, okay, you're a little girl. Oh, by the way, if I say something on here, if you don't have a sense of humor, just, go watch something else. I'm just joking around, so, that's the way it is. I don't endorse any products here, so I might show you some things that, throughout the different episodes. Today we're going to talk about ice fishing for muskies, and I'll show you some things, but I don't know any of these vendors, and they don't know me, and they didn't send me products for free. These are things that I bought with my own money and have used in most cases. Some things are new, and I haven't had a chance to break them in yet, but anything that you see on here today, you could feel free to post a comment and elaborate more, or if you guys ask nicely, I could do a deeper dive on anything that you see here today, because today's a little bit of overview of just some things that I do when I'm chasing muskies through the ice. We don't get the best ice here in PA. You guys in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Canada are very lucky. You have some good ice starting here soon. It's 2 days before Thanksgiving. I'm still a little ways off before we have fishable ice here. Sometimes I got to travel for it. But the nice part about where I am, and other states have this as well, is a no close season on musky fishing. So if you're in New York or you're Minnesota, Wisconsin, you have to kind of watch. I know Wisconsin has some, to the end of December or something like that in certain areas. And but if Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, all these states where musky fishing has become very popular, we could fish for them all year round. And I'm from Western PA, just north of Pittsburgh, and we have some of the best musky fishing out there. It's really a sleeper for different areas, different waters to catch them. And there's a lot of big fish, lakes that hold numbers. And today we're going to talk about what do you do when it's too cold to have the boat and fish from shore. So when water ices up, what do you do? So that's what I'm going to go through today. The things that I show you, you don't need all of them. Some are must-have, some are nice to have, some are just luxury items. So keep that in mind as you see the different things that I'm going to show you today. This may be one of the only fishing shows on YouTube where I'm admittingly drinking and promoting alcohol consumption. Okay. You don't like it? Too bad. All right. I may be a little bit buzzed. However, never too buzzed to think about safety. Okay, so we're talking about ice fishing today, mostly for muskies. I do fish for other species, like when I feel like being a little pansy. or when I'm bored, you know, if I see a school of panfish or something, I'll catch them and throw them on a tip up for bait. Or, you know, if there's a school of walleye around, I'll throw a couple on the ice and take them home and fillet them. But muskies are a precious resource. We want to promote catch and release. Please do so. Treat these muskies gently. They're powerful animals, but they're very fragile outside the water, even maybe more so on the ice. So we're going to talk about that a little later with how to take some precautions with the fish and with yourself. So let's talk about safety. Don't go on the ice unless you are sure that it is safe ice. I recommend you don't go alone, but I've done it. When I see a whole bunch of other people on the ice, you know, I can kind of feel a little bit better about going out. But there's some essential items that you should pick up. Everybody should be carrying these things. So let's talk about some of those. First things first is flotation. I see a lot of YouTubers on, you know, ice fishing and things like that. They're not really wearing any kind of PFD or anything like that. I think that's nuts. Please do so. That is not the way that you want to die. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. I mean, you could, you know, just go on and get a cheap life vest at Walmart if you want to. What I highly recommend is you look at some float suits. So I have the Predator from Striker. This is for my cold weather suit. I also have a Striker Ice Tracker, which is kind of made for maybe early or late ice. It's not as insulated, but they both have flotation in them, so that if by God some chance you go through, this is going to help you stay more buoyant. It may not completely make it 100% foolproof, but it's certainly nice to have, and something that I highly recommend to everybody. I also have a clam ice armor, which is nice too. I've worn that for a couple years now, but I switched to the Strikers because I think they fit a lot better and have a lot of cool features. And you know, we could talk about those and debate which ice suits are the best forever, but for my money, you know, Striker. And that's something that if you're going to start ice fishing for any species, please pick up a float suit. You're not going to regret it. It's going to keep you warm, and it could save your life. So a couple other things that everybody needs to carry. You know, some rope, whether you're alone or fishing with somebody else. If somebody falls through, you'd be pretty dumb if you walked up to that person and tried to pull them out, because that ice around them is obviously very weak. Use a rope, throw them a rope or a throwable PFD. Try to pull them out that way, and that way you both don't go in. You're not going to save anybody if you both go into the drink, frozen drink. So make sure you carry those things. I do every time. I don't go fishing unless I have these things, ice fishing. If we don't have these things, the trip's canceled, or I'm going to Walmart to pick up, or somewhere else to pick up what I don't have. Just do not go without these things, okay? Here's something I highly recommend. And there's a number of companies that make these things, but this is just one that I think is a nice value. Frable has this little kit. I don't know, it's like 15 bucks or something. Ice picks. And these, you know, all have a very similar concept, but some are different than others. Can fit around your neck. My suit, you can kind of Velcro them to your jacket. You use these if you fall through the ice and you can't grab onto the ice to pull yourself out. These, you can stab them into the ice and kind of pull yourself out and kind of roll yourself out of the ice. Must have. And why I like these ones is they have these retractable pins that grab the ice, but they're not going to stab you in the tits whenever you're walking around. Some don't have that retractable piece. Like, I just think that that's stupid. A whistle. You got to be able to make noise somehow. So if you're in the water, to alert people that you need help, have a whistle. The Frable kit also comes with these, you know, they're kind of chintzy. They're not great, but they're not horrible. I mean, I've worn them. They're okay. Little studded boot covers, just to help you keep your traction. You know, sometimes you're walking down hills and things like that, trying to get to the ice and running on the ice, and every little bit of traction helps to help keep you safe. All right, so a couple other things that I carry with me, especially when I know that there could be thin ice. When I say thin ice, if I don't think that there's 4 inches of ice out there, my fat ass doesn't go on it. You know, you watch some of these guys that like are walking on thin ice just because they're so desperate to go out ice fishing. Not doing it, but that's up to you. I don't recommend it. They say that for small groups, 1 to 2 fishermen, you know, you're looking at 4 to 6 inches of ice to be safe to fish on, and even more depths for larger shelters, larger groups, and any kind of vehicles if you're looking to do an ATV or a quad or something like that to pull your sled. So pay attention to what you think the ice thickness is, and there's a couple ways to kind of determine that. Number one would be to take something like this, like a spud bar, and try to, it's called a spud bar, push it through the ice as you're walking, almost like a walking stick to help you determine ahead of you what's the strength of the ice. And you kind of want to hear a nice solid thunk when you hit it. You don't want to hear the ice cracking or anything like that. You know, obviously if it cracks the ice and goes through it all, you know, you just turn around and go home. So a spud bar is a very useful thing. It's a bit heavy and cumbersome to carry around, but you know, I feel a lot better walking on the ice without it. Sometimes, especially when the lake's snow covered, you really kind of can't get a great feel for how deep the ice is. So get a spud bar. They're not expensive. One thing that you can do is, you know, network with your peers through Facebook or any other social media outlet. There's lots of good ice fishing resources out there in your region. So I know where I am in Pennsylvania, there's a Facebook group called Pennsylvania Ice Fishing, and it's always good to go on there and post something if you're planning a trip like, hey, how deep's the ice in this lake? They can sometimes get you a report on that. So do a little bit of research first before you head out. Go with a partner. Have all the essential safety items that we talked about here, and don't take any unnecessary chances. If you're in an area where the ice doesn't look thick, use your spud bar and test it. You know, obviously pay attention to any signs that, you know, where current might be flowing. That's a good sign that the ice is not going to be real thick in the heavy current areas, so where there's a lot of moving water. So yeah, that's all I have for the safety section. So remember these things. They are essential, must-have items. Dudes, if you're cold and wet, you're going to be miserable and you're going to hate doing this. So let's talk a little bit about personal comfort and some of the things that I do to really kind of enhance the experience. First and foremost is it's good to invest in some sort of shelter or ice shack, or there's a number of different terms for it. Shelter. I have a couple, and there's a lot of varieties based on how many people you typically go out with. I'm normally out with just 1 or 2 other people, but I have done like group trips. So I've invested in a couple different models. So I have here an Eskimo Evo 1T, I believe it is, which is a nice little flip-up shelter made for one person. You could put like a little person sitting on a bucket in the corner too. So it's actually pretty handy for that. Evo 1IT is the model. Pretty nice, sets up in seconds. Also has a lot of kind of storage in the back. 2-person shelter at most, but mostly 1 comfortable. This is the one I use most of the time. This is my Clam Yukon XL. Turn some lights on for you here. This is sold with 2 seats, but I've upgraded to a 3rd because I usually take my son and I, both my sons. So I did put a 3rd seat in it. There's a lot of room in here. It's giant. I actually have a floor for it. It sells floors. There's a lot of accessories you can buy for storage and rod holders, and you can trick your sled. There's a lot of cool YouTubes out there on tricking your sled. So mine just has some lights and some hangers. It's pretty basic. This little power box, if we're going to talk about electronics and power later. But I also have a 8-person Eskimo that's a little bit like this. It's a pop-up style hub that really fits a lot of people. It's kind of gigantic. I don't have it set up. It's kind of laying back there in the back. But that's for, like, you know, group trips. If I know there's pretty thick ice and want to do like a you know, big outing, or throw the cots in it and sleep overnight or something like that, I might use that. So those are my hubs. There's a lot of good ones out there. Auger makes a good one. I like both the Eskimo one I have and the clam. You know, a couple little things that annoyed me about both of them, but nothing enough to make me not like them. So if you don't have one, check them out, because they're really cool and really help make things more comfortable. The thermal ones I recommend over the cheapos, because especially when the wind's blowing, it'll keep you much warmer. If you have a part of the country where the climate's really, really cold, that'll also make you, you know, keep the heat in a little better. So let's talk about heat for a second. I have a couple different heaters. Ones that are real popular, that's the Big Buddy right there by Mr. Heater, and that's the new Buddy Flex. The Buddy Flex is cool because you can get a little side cooker for it, which I have, a little stove if you want to do like catch and cook or cook something, or heat up coffee in the shelter, which is nice. The Big Buddy is two 1-pound propane tanks. You can see that one holds one, but you can actually hook either of them up to like a 20-pound tank or something like that if you want more capacity. Obviously the big one kicks out more heat, and it's got a little battery operated fan in it to circulate some of the heat. So one thing I am looking to get for my shelter is one of those ceiling fans to help draw the heat up a little bit. I don't have one of those, but you know, I'm looking at doing that. So those are some of the things that, you know, I mean, I want to consider if you have the means. You know, get yourself a shelter, get yourself a decent heater, because being cold and wet sucks. Let's talk about electronics. It's like big in the ice fishing world. Most of these things are nice to have. You can get away with the cheapest fish finder, depth finder you can find, because really all you're really at the minimum concerned about is, you know, what depth you're at. If you know the lake that you're fishing pretty well, it's maybe even more optional, but it sure makes it nice. So, you know, I work in the IT field, so I'm a geek. I believe in the power of technology and whiskey, and I have a number of things that I bring some or all of them with me, depending on. I have a couple people to help me lug the equipment around. So let's talk about some of the electronics that maybe you might find useful. Let's talk about the fish finder side first. So I have a couple different options here. When I'm just looking to do something basic, I use a Markham M5, Markham, Vexillar, both very nice flashers. Humminbird has a flasher built into their system. You know, everybody's got their own preference on who they like, you know, Lowrance or Humminbird or whatnot. Or if you're a Markham guy or a Vexillar guy, you know, I chose these. I like anything with a lithium battery or a shuttle that comes with it to make it easier to carry around the ice. You can see this Markham I have has this lithium battery shelter, which has lights and accessory ports for me to plug in these little lights and phone cradle, and very nice and easy to move around the ice and hole hop and be portable. So when I'm sitting in the shelter, I am a live scope guy. So if you don't have live scope, you're a loser. You should get it. It's I'm not going to get into too many details here on this video, but if you want to do a live scope video, you know, we'll talk more about it and why I think it's very important, especially in the musky fishing world. I have a number of opinions on that. This is the shuttle. It's made by Summit, and it fits my 7-inch Garmin. And I also have a number of weird things. I have this hub is actually for, I bring this on my boat when there's not ice, and I hook my console fish finder to it, so it networks this screen together. This might sit up on the bow, and it networks my two screens together. It has its independent battery. I use Amped Outdoors battery. This is a 30 amp hour. There's also one on my power box that I showed you in my sled earlier. It's a lithium battery that I've had a lot of success with, but I know the Dakota lithiums are good too. You know, take a look at the battery. So when you're running these electronics, you have basically everything that you need in terms of power. The live scope transducer mounts to this pole here. There's a number of different options there. Garmin makes a live scope bundle. If you guys want to talk more about that, just let me know. Put something in the comments, and we'll go into it more. Many ice fishermen choose to use a camera. I sometimes do and I sometimes don't. Here's what this is good for. So if you're bored, if you're looking for something to do that's kind of cool to sit down there and kind of watch the fish, but in practical use, it's nice to, kind of watch your bait and see how the fish are kind of reacting to it. So as a muskie guy, I'll put a big sucker out there, and I want to make sure the sucker's alive. And if there's muskies around, if I don't see any muskies swimming by or even sniffing the sucker, I'll pull it up and move to a different spot, which, the camera's good for that. This is an Aqua View. Markham makes them. There's a number of different manufacturers here, different sizes. This one's a pretty big honking thing because I take it on my boat too. But 75 feet of cable, it's a bit heavy. Sometimes I don't carry it if I don't feel like lugging a whole bunch of equipment. There are smaller, more portable units available, which are kind of cool too. So definitely an optional item, but sometimes when you're sitting there and you have a bunch of tip-ups up and there's not a lot of fish activity, you get bored. So you can do this or watch porn or whatever you guys do. This can kind of help pass the time, but also teach you something about the spot that you're fishing. For the electronics, I also just want to talk about tip-up sensors. So I use these blue tips, they're called. And I know there's other manufacturers out there like Vulture Systems. I think everybody will have an opinion on these too. I've had great success with these. So what these are basically, this is a receiver that kind of mounts via a PVC pole and rubber band that they give you onto my shelter like that. So it extends the range of these sensors, and basically you pair them with your phone. And you can see I have my iPhone there. There's all 6 of my sensors. I like to write numbers on them and kind of scratch down when I get in the shelter, like where I placed each sensor, each tip up, so I know exactly which one's going off and when. And basically what these things do is, just for an example here on an iFish Pro, we're going to talk about tip ups in a little bit, but on this particular model you can just attach these. This one doesn't sit great on here, so I always keep a little bit of Gorilla tape or electrical tape with me to help fasten these. But basically when these things go off,
that's a huge bitch.
Made a little custom audio file. Now it tells you there's a fish on number 1. You can view it or disable it. Or dismiss the alert. I carry a little Bluetooth speaker just for listening to music, but also for this particular sensor alarm when they go off, that everybody hears it. So when those kind of go off, we go run into the flag and go see if there's a fish. So that's all I pretty much had on the electronic side of the house. Feel free to comment below, or if you have any questions, please ask. So an auger for making the hole in the ice is one of those things that you can kind of do it the old-fashioned way and spend very little money by using a spud bar and punching a hole in the ice, or even just a manual cranking auger, which aren't very expensive, but you need to get a hole in the ice somehow. So I carry a number of different options depending on what the scenario calls for in any one given day. I do have a 6, 8, and a 10-inch auger. What I would recommend is, if you're a big game fisherman like me, 8-inch is probably a good, solid, all-around choice. There's a lot of different ways that this can be done. There's some that mount to like a DeWalt or a Milwaukee or another drill via this clam plate here. That's one good way to do it. Use your drill. There's gas, propane, and now lithium powered augers as well. So this is a Strike Master 40 volt lithium. This is the one I pretty much go to consistently. drills a lot of holes. I have 2 batteries for it. Drills fast and it's a little bit lighter. It's just fantastic. But sometimes I need to drill the real big holes for, you know, big suckers I'm using, or if I'm hunting real big fish. I have this propane Eskimo Rocket P1 propane auger, which is very cool as well. So 6, 8, and 10-inch augers, but you can also, you know, use a manual crank one like the one that's attached to my clam plate there is just a Mora, I believe it's called. Pretty cheap to get those in a manual crank model, so you can get pretty reasonable on the auger. You better take care of the muskies if you catch one. I don't like to promote keeping them and eating them. They're not that great to eat. They're a precious resource and they should be protected and treated with the utmost respect. Please do so. One of the things that's very important for that is to make sure that you've brought the right handling tools, the fish handling and release tools with you. Same in the summer and spring and fall when you're fishing in regular conditions. You know, you have a net, you need some certain things, you need pliers. You know, there's a different checklist of things that everybody has, but I'm going to talk about the things that I bring every time that I am targeting muskies. Number 1, long needle nose pliers. Hope better to have like stainless steel ones so they don't rust up on you. Strong enough and long enough to get down a muskie's throat to unhook them. A pair of bolt cutters or hook cutters like these. These are Nipix. There's a number of lower cost options out there in different sizes. Make sure you get one that would cut any treble hook that you could potentially have buried in a fish. It's better to spend 25 cents on a new hook and cut a fish free than to hurt yourself or hurt the fish. So bring hook cutters. They're very, very important. Baker makes these items called jaw spreaders. They help you open their mouth. Just a simple piece of thick wire to help spread the fish's mouth open to help you operate in there with the pliers or the hook cutters. It's a good idea to have some gloves. You're probably going to be wearing them anyway because you're ice fishing, but handling the fish, they got sharp gills and teeth, and you want to protect yourself and protect the fish too. Please don't. This is very important. I carry a little mat with me, so if I run to a tip up or I'm out of spot fishing and we hook a fish, we bring a little mat, we lay it down on the ice. So as I mentioned earlier in the video, muskies are powerful animals, but they're also very fragile. You don't want to let that fish lay around flopping around the ice. It's bad for its gills, it's bad for its skin. Keep it out of the water only for the amount of time you need to unhook it safely, take a picture, and then put it back. Please protect these resources. I'm a big proponent of that. So please take care of them and take care of yourself by making sure that you have all these tools. It's also good to have a good measurement tool. You can just buy a cheap tape measure, a soft tape measure if you'd like. I chose one of these things. It's basically a sticker for a bump board, which I got on Muskie Fool. Very cool shop. Simple to roll up and stow in your bag somewhere or somewhere in your gear, your tackle storage. Lay it out on the mat, and you can not only measure the length of the fish very easily, you can wrap it around and measure the girth and do a quick photo and then send it on its way. So please take care of the fish and take care of yourself and have the right tools to do so. All right, let's talk about rigging and how you catch them. So there's a couple ways to do it. And here's the most common. So I use tip-ups a lot. Tip-ups a pretty simple device. Been around for many, many, many years. There's not a whole lot of science behind it. There's a ton of good YouTubes out there if you want to see how they operate. I use beaver dams, but they're a little more expensive, but there's other good options out there, Frable and HT Enterprises and others that are out there. Pretty simple device. I spool this up. I use Suffix tip-up braid. There's a number of others that you can purchase as well. I use 50-pound braid on here. It helps shed water. It's easy to hand line. Basically run this through this little device here, and this allows the live bait to swim and spin around without tripping your flag. You set your flag on either the 1 to 2 settings, and when a fish takes the bait, the tip up goes up. Again, if you saw the electronic section earlier, I have those sensors that kind of go off whenever a fish takes the bait. Typically run these with like a quick strike rig. Again, you can find those online anywhere. A couple treble hooks, one in the front nose part of the bait and one near the dorsal fin. Is typically what I use, but there's a number of different options. You can do a straight treble in the back and things like that. There's lots of different styles of tip-ups. There's these plank styles, and then there's these types like a disc. This is a Frable. They have insulation on, which is cool if you're having trouble with your ice hole freezing up. Don't freeze your ice hole. Same concept though. You lower the spool into the water, set the flag, and when the flag goes up, you've got a typically has a fish, but there's a lot of false tip-ups too that sometimes you have to fight with. So if you're using live suckers, I like to clip the tail fins off a little bit so they can't move around as much, but they're still lively. That helps some of the false flags. There's also some tricks you can do with clipping like a little planer board release onto your tip-ups to pinch the line, and like the fish will take the line out and pull it out of the clip, and then it will start to free spool. So a sucker or a live bait typically won't set your tip-off up unless a big fish comes along. Showed you this a little earlier. This is the iFish Pro. This is meant to be used with a regular rod and reel. So your rod sits back here. Line gets dropped down. It uses these little clips to help the mechanism. There's some good videos on how to set the iFish Pro. Very cool, because if you're big on fighting fish with regular rod and reel, this is a cool way to set live bait down and have a tip-up style fishing, but not have to hand line and pull them in. You can use a regular rod and reel. So let's talk about rod and reels for a little bit, because there are heavy-duty musky outfits out there for ice fishing. So I'll show you a couple that I use here. This is kind of a top-of-the-line model here. Any good bait caster will work. This is an Akuma, but there's a number of great ones out there. You just want something with some decent drag. This one is a Hot Rod, H-A-A-T. Eric Hadaja makes these. Really expensive, but this is made for like big lake trout. This is a 45-inch extra heavy bait cast rod. Great for just jigging baits, which I'll talk about a couple that I use here in a little bit. Good backbone for fighting fish. Has a bait clicker if I want to run it on a tip like an iFish Pro. I could set it in kind of free spool mode and set the bait clicker. A lot of times with the tip-ups for the iFish Pros, and you'll use something like this. This is a St. Croix Custom Ice Apex Predator 42-inch heavy outfit. I'll typically just run, like Suffix braid or something on my reels. One thing you want to, this is with this particular setup with the iFish Pro, the only thing you want to note is typically you need to be able to set your reel into some kind of free spool mode, or loosen your drag all the way, because that fish is going to take your bait and run. And once if it feels too much pressure because you have the bail closed and your drag too tight, it's going to release the lure and the bait, and you're not going to catch them. So a lot of times I'll use something like this. This is an Akuma reel with there's an Avenger, I can't remember which model this is. This is the Trio bait feeder, which is cool. There's, Shimano makes a cool rod, a reel bait runner. There's a number of different companies out there, but what makes it kind of unique is this little free spool mechanism here that sets the free spool. So when the fish takes your bait, it tips your iFish Pro or whatever you're using. There's a couple other types like the automatic fisherman, jaw jacker, and things like that. But when the reel's in free spool, you can basically just crank it or flick the switch and you're back to your regular drag, and you can set the hook and fight the fish. So that's one thing to take note of when you're looking at rods and reels. You want to look at heavy power or extra heavy power. They do make them. A number of companies make them. Reels, good drag. I like the bait casters because I could put some heavy braid on them, and I'm used to using them all year, so I use them on the ice too. One thing that I'm going to try for this year that I've never done before, but I know they catch big pike on them, so it's got to work for muskies, right? Jaw jackers. And there's another type called an automatic fisherman, which I've never used personally, but I've never used them before because they just became legal in Pennsylvania. So I might try them out this year with some live bait. We'll see how it goes. But similar concept, you use a rod and reel like I showed you with the iFish Pro. Here's the jaw jacker. Haven't even opened it yet. Set it, and what will happen is when the fish takes the bait, it will trip the mechanism, and it will essentially set the hook for you by releasing the rod tension, and then you can fight the fish. The other thing that they sell, which is pretty cool, is this base. It's a jigging base, which you run on some kind of batteries. I'm not sure which ones, can't remember. But they're supposed to double A, 3 AA. It's supposed to run all day, even in the cold. And what this will do, which is kind of cool, is it will move your bait up and down in a couple different cadences you can set, like a faster motion or like a slow jig, almost like a vertical jigging motion for dead bait or something like that, if that's all you got. Try those out this year. So let's talk about some of the lures that I carry with me when I'm sitting in the shelter just jigging manually, because there's a number of different good lures out there, but here's some of my favorites. Use this one probably the most, quite a bit. It's called a Fuzzy Does It. It's a blade style bait, a lot like a sonar, a head and sonar, or a steel shad, just larger. Lot of vibration, great for vertical jigging. Use these quite a bit. I have them in a number of different colors. One of the ones that I use most frequently as well, staple in any musky fisherman's box, the Bondi bait. And of any size, I like the little smaller ones because they work a little better with the short ice rods. This is one that I'll kind of use quite a bit for vertical jigging presentation. But there's a number of different options out there that are similar. This is a Rippin' Dog from Musky Innovations. Good bait, a lot of erratic action, easy to handle with the ice rods as well. Here's one I liked, another one from Bondi, the Orba, with the blades on the back. Super lure there as well. And then I'll also carry a variety of tubes, like the Red Octobers work really nice. And I have this, I have a set of smaller tubes. You don't always have to carry the big stuff, but there's some 7-inch Water Wolf lures tubes with the rigging kits that I have, and sometimes I'll even put on like a smaller version, say like a 4 or 5-inch tube, and you can pick up a bonus walleye or another species with it, but the muskies will eat those too. So tubes are very easy to kind of sit there and jig for hours, and they work quite well. So those are some of my favorite lures to take with me when I'm musky fishing through the ice. So that's about it. Glass is empty. The whiskey was good. I'm sure there's things that I left out or things that I could have gone into more detail on. There's great videos for most of these products that I mentioned earlier. You can learn more about them, or you can post a comment or ask a question. I'll try to help you out as best I can. I'm sure I didn't cover everything that you need for Ice Fishing 101. There's other little tools and things like that that can help you. Most things I mentioned today were kind of musky, pike specific, but are relevant for other species as well. So If I forgot something, don't get all butthurt. Not meant to be a 100% comprehensive ice fishing 101 video. I just want to show you some of the things that I take into account when planning my muskie trips for the ice. I'm looking forward to getting some ice here shortly, and hopefully maybe my next broadcast will be from inside the shelter on the lake, and we'll be hunting some esox. Join Muskies Inc. It's a great organization with great people and a great cause. Let's protect the species and protect muskie fishing for generations to come. Hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be on next month with another topic and another bottle of whiskey. And like and subscribe. See ya.